Abby.
I'm Natalie.
I'm Sydney.
It's time
To learn
About tamoxifen hormone therapy.
introduction.
Inflammatory breast cancer is known as IBC. It is a type of breast cancer that is an invasive ductal carcinoma and accounts for only 1 to 5% of breast cancers.
By the time inflammatory breast cancer is caught, it's usually stage 3. This means that the cancer has spread to the skin and that the cancer cells are blocking the skin lymph vessels and causing inflammation. This is a telltale sign of IBC.
IBC can be difficult to diagnose because of the common lack of breast lumps. This makes it difficult to be diagnosed with mammogram. IBC can be diagnosed with a biopsy or other imaging tests such as ultrasounds or MRIs.
There are a variety of gene mutations that seem to be related to the development of inflammatory breast cancer, one of which is the mutation of the TP53 gene. TP53 gene codes for the protein tumor protein 53. Patients with IBC who have a mutated TP53 gene don't have the properly functioning tumor suppressor gene. This means that they won't be able to have the defense mechanism against the proliferation of tumor cells. The overexpression of the ERBB2 gene is also common in patients with inflammatory breast cancer. The overexpression of this gene is shown to result in aggressive tumor cells. The ERBB2 gene encodes for the protein HER2. In patients who are HER2 positive, there is an overproduction of the HER2 protein, which can cause the proliferation of cancer cells. A biopsy can be done on a patient with inflammatory breast cancer to show if they are hormone receptor positive cancer cells. There is estrogen receptor positive and progesterone receptor positive. In patients who are hormone receptor positive, the cancer cells feed off the hormones and rely on them to grow.
Tamoxifen is one of the drugs that is used to treat hormone receptor positive IBC. Tamoxifen is known as a selective estrogen receptor modulator.
Tamoxifen is a drug used for hormone therapy. In the cell, tamoxifen binds to the estrogen receptor. Once the drug enters the cell, it stops estrogen from being able to bind. The drug then cuts off the cell's supply to the hormone that it needs to grow, slowing the growth of tumors.
Let's see how it works.
This is an estrogen receptor.
These represent the hormone estrogen.
These represent molecules of tamoxifen.
In a patient who isn't given tamoxifen, the estrogen is allowed to bind at the hormone receptor, giving the tumor what it needs to grow and divide. When a patient is given tamoxifen, the tamoxifen binds to the estrogen receptors instead of the estrogen. This way, the cell doesn't get the estrogen hormone that it needs to grow, and this slows the progression of tumors.
Study 1.
The first study shows the difference between using tamoxifen for 5 years compared to 10 years. This data was statistically analyzed by using this equation. For this study, many trials were conducted. One group received no tamoxifen, the other group received 5 years of tamoxifen, and the final group received 10 years of tamoxifen. The group that received tamoxifen for 10 years had lower reoccurrence rates and death rates.
Study 2. The second study involved uncovering the pathway of tamoxifen resistance in IBC patients. This was done by studying the activity levels of different pathways using Z-scores and survival analysis. The study showed that the combination of these genes leads to tamoxifen resistance in IBC patients. Study 3.
The third study involved comparing 2 drugs that are used to treat ER-positive IBC. These drugs were tamoxifen and aromatase inhibitors. These 2 drugs were compared by sites, dates, reoccurrences, and death rates. These values were then collected, ranked, and tested for trends. The rate of reoccurrence ended up being lower in women who received aromatase inhibitors compared to women who received tamoxifen.
Study 4. Study 4 investigates gene expression in tamoxifen-resistant breast cancer cells. The survival rates of patients were compared to determine the relevance of gene expression. The study concluded that there was high gene expression in patients with relapse-free survival after tamoxifen therapy.
Does anybody have hormone receptor positive inflammatory breast cancer?
I do!
Try tamoxifen.
For this trial,